Hey everyone, welcome to Prepare to Go There. My name is Peter Burchfield. I'm the host of this self-leadership podcast and the creator of the Pioneer the Year course. Thanks so much for watching, for working on your self-leadership. I believe that you're going places, but it takes a lot of work to get there. And so that's what I'm here for, just bringing us together to have meaningful conversations so we can lead ourselves and stay focused on our future. I want to jump right into the conversation today because I've recruited a great friend and leader. His name is Jarrell Flowers, and he is an artist. He's the founder of the Rise movement. He's a believer. He's a family man. And I love listening and learning, not just from what he says, but his example. And I've actually kind of been watching his path and actually making life choices with his example as well. And so I'm super grateful he's on. Let me bring him on, and we're going to talk about the rise of creative communities. No pun intended. Let's welcome Jarrell right now. What's up, brother?
Hey, man. Hey, thank you for having me on, bro. And I love the pun. That was cool, man.
Very fun. Hey, I really am grateful for your time, and so we're going to just dive right in. Tell us about yourself and tell us what you've been working on recently, because a lot of us need to just see like a real life case study. It's not like we have all this free time in the world to just go do our passion projects. We're actually working on our future in the middle of life and family and stuff. Yeah. And so just kind of introduce yourself and give us a snapshot of where you're at right now.
Yeah. So my name's Jarrell Flowers. I'm married to my wife, Janelle. We have 3 beautiful daughters. I was raised up in the church. So actually at the same church from about 3 or 4 years old all the way until about 4 years ago. So like it was so I was kind of raised up in church culture and everything. God started dealing with me about discipleship and about what authentic community looks like. And with me being a creative, I also, I do hip hop, spoken word, and rebrands for different organizations that tour and all that kind of stuff. So marrying a creative biblical community with creative culture was something that was like God was just pushing me in the direction of going. And so, yeah, we started the Rise movement. Started out kind of as a big group of about 200 people. And over the years, just because of everything going on with everything from COVID to technology and all that kind of stuff, we actually kind of transitioned into being a network of smaller communities. And so it's been really cool to see how God is using us to plant creative communities that we call them missional communities. And so they are going throughout the city. There's about 5 of them right now. And they're just preaching the gospel in their own way. And so we just try to, as Rise, we try to empower those communities.
Man, it's so amazing. I want to dive into your creative process, and then I want to ask you like any lessons learned about pioneering creative communities. I mean, what a cool new, fresh take on just life. And before that, I'm going to explain the Pioneer of the Year quiz. And Jarrell, I don't know if there's any easy adjustments you can make to your mic or your audio. I was getting a little bit of static, but I think it'll clear itself out. Okay. But while I talk about that, I don't know if there's anything you can bump around there. So what I want to do is invite each of you that are watching to take a quiz, and it's called the Pioneering Archetype. Basically, I'm on a mission to let you know you really can pioneer this year. It doesn't have to be the same year after year. You don't have to go through what I call a repeat year cycle. You can actually lead yourself into new experiences and accomplish the goals that you've been wanting to do for a long time. And it doesn't have to be you fitting into a certain mold. It's about you identifying your unique leadership approach. to the future, to teamwork, to preparation versus procrastination. And we just need that encouragement to say, hey, I really can pioneer this year. And so that's why my wife and I created this quiz. It's fun. We hope that it's an easy experience. And it's been a lot of fun to kind of interview my friends and other leaders on what kind of pioneer they are. And so, Jarrell, I don't know if you got to take the quiz yet, but I'd love to hear what your results were.
So I was an explorer.
Hey,
yeah,
let's go.
Yeah, that was some of the. I love the fact that it was like multiple choice. So it was like super easy to figure out. Okay, yeah, this is definitely me. This is definitely me. So yeah,
very cool. So basically, there's 4 pioneering archetypes in the quiz. There's the explorer, the pathfinder, the homesteader, and the trailblazer, and they're all amazing. We didn't want there to be like any hierarchy. We need all kinds of pioneers, and they each have a different edge that they're bringing to their challenges and their choices. The explorer has a creative edge, go figure. And they're the ones that like to explore what's out there, get new ideas, meet new people, and then network with all of those ideas to create something fresh. And so they are like kind of all over the place at once. And I think that's a part of their, the way they're wired. But it does come with some pros and cons. And as long as you can better understand, the way you're wired by the Lord, that you don't have to feel disadvantaged. You can actually be really empowered and really leverage your leadership approach. And so I encourage everybody, go take it and enjoy this process. It will give you 3 things. 1, it'll tell you what pioneering archetype you are, so your result, and it'll give you a summary to kind of see how you relate to it. The second thing is it'll actually give you a coaching action plan right there in the results. And so scroll all the way down. It's not clickbait. It's like custom coaching content that I made for you. Each archetype has a different action plan that fits, their style and their goals. And then the third thing is you'll get a summary of the Pioneer of the Year course, and it'll kind of be an on-ramp to go check out the course as well. So I encourage y'all to do that, and it will really help you out. Jarrell, let's get started with this conversation, talking about pioneering leadership and talking about how pioneering leaders are actually inspiring the arts and culture and these creative communities you're talking about. And so I wanted to kind of tee up the big idea, which is pioneering leadership is fresh, it's needed, it's an emphasis that's going on right now in the leadership space. And I'm so thankful for every, lane and vein of leadership. I remember, when I heard about servant leadership, that changed my life. I remember when I learned about self-leadership, that's been like, 4 or 5 years just working on that and figuring that out. And I'm grateful for visionary leadership, organizational leadership, but I believe pioneering leadership needs the focus right now because we've never been here before. And so pioneering leaders are the people that are willing to navigate and create the future of what they do. And they can actually go into a space and they can turn somewhere or something that's been going through a repeat year cycle, just kind of doing the same thing, go through the motions, and they actually turn it into new frontiers. They can actually turn a team, a culture, a community that's been going through the motions, and they can help it get on track with movement. And so that's where we need pioneering leaders in all kinds of spaces, in the church space, in the art space, in the family space, education, politics. We need leaders that are willing to really pioneer and to have the courage and the humility to do it, on the front line. And so I'd love to just kind of take your thoughts on this. Why do you think pioneering leaders are, being spotlighted right now? And what are you learning in your own pioneering leadership journey that can encourage us?
Yeah. So Man, that's a great question. I think that one reason why they're being spotlighted is because God is focusing on multiplication and not just addition. He's focusing on taking new ground.
Yes.
During the season, there's a big emphasis on mission, and you can't have a mission movement without people taking new ground, going to different places that have never been that uncharted waters, I would say. You know what I mean? So it's like I think for a long time the church has been kind of in a space of just kind of preserving what we have. You know what I'm saying? And just ministering, and that's great, actually. You know, we can't. You know, I think of the story of David, where David's like, you know, he goes and gets the families, but he has men stay back, right, and to protect the goods, right. So there's like both of those things happening at the same time. But I think now even more so because of the harvest, like Jesus says, send laborers. Pray to the Lord of the harvest to send laborers into the harvest, and so it's mission field, it's mission work, and so that requires not just ministering to the people that are already in the quote unquote church, but it's also like, hey, let's find the people that God wants to bring into His family, right? And so for me, on a personal level, I feel like I've always had this edge of like, hey, let's go to uncharted territory. Let's do something different. You know what I mean? I've always had this feeling like, man, I don't want to just keep doing the same thing over and over. And so that's good. I'm finding out that that's good, and that's also, there's some challenges that come with that too, because there is progress can be made in like because of repetition, and that's hard for me to grasp sometimes. But like forward movement, I would say, like getting those foundations actually helps me to be confident in moving forward. I'll say it that way. So
man, that's so good.
I think that so for me, I am learning. Yes, the new thing is awesome. It's great. It's necessary. Having that attitude is necessary for taking new ground for the kingdom. But my wife and I actually are in a season right now of something that doesn't come natural to creatives, and that's like, okay, what are the systems that are in place that are going to be able to make this scalable, so we can continue to do this long term. And so that's all a part of pioneering leadership, right? Like part of pioneering leadership to me is, yes, we got to go forward, but we can't go forward in confidence if there's no systems and foundations in place. So I have to lean into those areas where I have to grow in that area, and I have to surround myself with other people that are system-minded people, so that we can go forward, so that we can have greater impact.
Wow, that is so good. Y'all literally need to go back 90 seconds and listen to that again. Not 1.5, just the normal 1 speed, and just take that in. And it's so important, pioneering leaders are willing to go launch out and be the founder of something new and needed, but they're not willing to just be a one generation leader or a one generation movement. And so they realize, hey, I am the founder of something, but I want to create a foundation that's going to go into the future as well. And making that jump from founder to foundation is just as tough as, getting out of a rut and, following that passion and that purpose that's in you. So thank you for modeling it in real time and keeping your joy all the way through it. You're not on trying to get to a certain destination. You really are content to just go on the journey and just see how all these doors and all these fields are opening up to you. I'd love to just ask you, pioneering leaders, wherever they show up, they're disruptive, they're imaginative, they're changing the game. And you've been in the creative space, working with creatives, working with, music labels. Obviously, you have your own music label, the Freedom Music Group, and you're seeing, the industry in a way. What would you like to see leaders pioneer next in this creative arts space?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, that answer is like really simple. For me, I want to see a gospel like discipling movement happen in the creative space. I think that we are at a place where we've gotten really good at the craft. You know what I'm saying? So music Christian music is probably the best that it's ever been. You know, I work a lot in the hip hop space, and I have artists who are in our community who are just working in, you know, photography and videography, all these different spaces. And I think because of technology and all this kind of stuff, like Christian art, you know, the art that we're exporting is probably, I would say, it's the best that it's been. You know what I mean? There's so much access to learning and all that kind of stuff. What we're also seeing is this excellence in art, but we're also seeing kind of like a decline in character, especially with the with Christian singers and hip hop artists and all these different things. Not just the ones that are spotlighted, but just as I'm working in the space, like I just see an overall like moral decline, you know. And so what I know is that if the art that we create it. I mean, if it's good, honest art, it's going to be created from a space of who we are, right? And so God is so good to us that a lot of times He doesn't allow us to go and go and go without having a foundational, foundation in our character. Like He doesn't allow us to do that. Sometimes, I run into artists a lot that are just like, man, I don't know why I'm not here and here and here. My art is good enough. And God's like, well, maybe God's actually sparing you. Like maybe he's being kind, you know. So I think that that what I would love to see and what I'm working towards is seeing a gospel movement and a disciple making movement in the art space. And so and what that looks like is creating communities where people can actually create together, but there's also like having gospel conversations like, hey, how are you doing with your relationship with the Lord? How are you doing in the context of community? Because in the arts world, everything can be so isolated. It can be like, yeah, I'm just going to work on me. I'm going to do my thing and hopefully I'll blow up, and there's no creating in the context of community. So there's that, there's the up, there's the in with community. And then there's like the mission. Like, are you actually using your gift for mission, or is it just so that you can be famous, or like what is it for? You know what I mean? So yeah, that's for the believer and for the non-believer. Honestly, like those are kind of the approaches that I'm taking, because everybody needs, in the creative world, there's a lot of people that are spiritual, like super spiritual. They're just not sold on the Jesus thing, but they are spiritual. And so connecting people to the one true God, connecting them to community, because you actually create healthier art when you're in community, and then actually reaching people. Even a non-believer wants their art to be seen, and wants their, every art has a message. Every piece has a message, so everybody's preaching, right? It just depends on like what exactly are you preaching? Are you exporting something that's going to help or hurt our community? So
wow.
So yeah, that kind of movement is what I'm working towards.
Woo! Fire. Yeah, and it really is going back to the people that you're doing life with, and the process of, for us, we've made that commitment. We want to be more like Jesus, and then exporting, like you said, something that's going to help our community, export something that's going to express why we've made this decision, to put our trust in the Lord. So that's super good. Jarrell, I want to take some time, if it's cool, to talk about your own journey, your own leadership journey with your art and kind of figuring it out. And one thing I've learned is pioneering leaders are willing to learn how to navigate the landscape of their future. In other words, there's not a clear path, you know?
Yeah.
And so you start with this big idea, but it's almost like my friend Chris Needham says, is as the crow flies, meaning, you know, when you're on a high place on a mountaintop, it looks like A to B. But then when you get back down the mountain, it's not A to B. It's like detours and pitfalls and, you know, all kinds of wildlife, you know, coming at you. And so we get this kind of, you know, frustration and even disillusionment. We're like, I thought this would be so straightforward, and it's not. And something I thought I could knock out in, you know, 3 years or a year, it's taken me a few decades just to be on this journey. And so I think we need to get a lot of encouragement out to creatives right now, because a lot of them are going to forfeit, you know, a lot of genuine influence because they don't understand that process. So can you kind of like just encourage us, because navigating that creative landscape as an artist, I'm sure, is very daunting. So like, tell us about your motivation. How did you learn to pioneer that space instead of fear it? You know, you had the choice. Do I fear this creative space, or am I going to pioneer it? And like, how did you find your motivation to pioneer it?
And then you're talking about specifically in my own life, like yeah. So, for me, I've never really had a too big of a struggle with like embracing the creativity that the Lord's given me, but I did have a struggle with the mission aspect of it. So I didn't think that it was anything bad to just, you know, create art for Jesus and plagiarize the Bible and like do all these awesome things in my art. But then as I began to just really connect with people in the arts community, I found out like very quickly that you know, the parable method, it's like it's stories. You know what I'm saying? And if I want it to be an authentic story, I have to look at my own life and say, God, what are you doing in my life? How do I create this as a story, and be okay with the journey? So in my last album, like, which is called Rise, like the whole, you know, album is a story about a person who's starting off and they're just like, yes, they're excited about, you know, it's like kind of like me against the world kind of thing. And then it turns into exactly what you're talking about, all the pitfalls and, you know, the need for community. And on the last line of that album, I say, learning to love the journey, I learned not to hate myself. And for me, like that's, you know, I can be so focused on, okay, I need to get from A to B, right? Like, and so anything else that stands in my way of me getting from A to B is not considered a roadblock. And if I can't get over that roadblock, then that means, you know, a lot of times I feel like I am a failure, right? If I can't get over the roadblock. But if I say, okay, Lord, you've already preordained this journey, right? And I'm just walking with you, then if I learn to embrace the journey and I learn to love it, then I'll learn not to hate myself and get down on myself, or if I do something that falls short of that A to B goal. You know what I mean? So so for me, it really has been like, okay, Lord, this is ultimately your story. You know, like he is the artist and it's his story, and I get a chance to be a part of it. You know what I mean? And he's the narrator, you know?
Yes.
So just learning to be okay with that has really put me in a healthy place to create better art.
Yes, that's so good. The last episode of Prepare to Go There, 116, I had a conversation with Josh Callender, who's doing a great job here in Houston with Dwelling Place. And he was talking about the two modes of leadership as destination versus journey. And it was so good. He says, when leaders are destination minded, they're always thinking about where they're not. And the motivation is always, we're not there, we're not done, we're not good enough. And they're always like, they never take time to, you know, basically take care of their people, because they're basically a means to the end. And they don't, you know, they're always kind of measuring based on where they're not. And then he said, when you kind of change your MO and it's like, no, we're journey, he says, then the motivation is how far we've come, how far we've come, how far we've come, and like focusing on the Lord's faithfulness to bring us. And then he said, oh man, it was so good. I just encourage everybody, go check it out. And that's why I'm showing up live stream. You know, I could keep doing produce content, just kind of throw out little videos and things, which I will when I get more bandwidth. But I'm more committed to just show up live and go for, you know, long form content and go long haul conversation, because that's what we need. We need encouragement to stay on that journey, and having just people just come and go and just add their value and add their insights is just, it means the world to me. And he said, 116 Josh Calendar, go check it out, how to be a good translator for your team's future. And he said, I'm okay with someone getting to the destination even if I don't, because I was grateful to be on the journey. And I don't know, man, it was really good. Jarrell, we are coming up on the half-hour mark. I don't know if I can get a little more time from you, or if we need to go to the last question. Okay, thank you so much. I want to keep talking about your journey and figuring out like your creativity. We talked about motivation. I want to talk about you finding your voice, you know, and maybe that's crafting your voice and kind of figuring out your messaging and how you're going to, you know, present yourself in your music, in your messaging. I have found personally one of the biggest challenges, even coming on and doing something like this, is like just figuring out my voice and, you know, what to say, how to say it, you know, getting out of category and being willing to go deeper and deeper into complexity, and then figure out how to survive it and come out with simplicity and actually share something simple that's not surface level, but is, you know, seed form, and, you know, that will send people on their own journey. So like, what would you say to other leaders, either emerging leaders or really established leaders that just need to retool? How do you help them work through their voice and just figure out like how to say something that's has depth and it's like true, but then also say it in a way that feels authentic, you know, to you?
Oh man, bro.
Because I was listening to your album this morning prepping, and I was like, oh, this is so good. And it's not just the music, right? It's the messaging. Like everything is very intentional, and it's been distilled, and it's been like forged in this furnace. And I'm like, that didn't come overnight. You know, I can feel like a lot of years and a lot of, I don't know, just journey. There's a lot of depth in it. So like, how do we get there, I guess?
Bro. So I love this conversation. So let's just start, give me a flag if I start going over.
Okay.
But yeah, man. So one of the awesome things that I love about the scripture is that you can read it on multiple levels, right? Like you can read it on a surface level and it can actually mean something to you. And then, but like we have theologians out there that are still racking their brains about stuff that's in scripture. And it's just like, so there's different levels of hearing this work of art, like that we call the word of God, you know what I'm saying? And reading it, there's like just different levels of understanding. So it's as surface as you want to be and as deep as you want to go. You know what I mean? So I think that looking at the scripture, there is an overall narrative And so for us personally, I think that that God's given us, in our voice, has given us a life message kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so there's like an overall narrative. And so we're living through that. We're trying to process all these different things, and so we get different pieces of revelation from this overarching life message, right? And so I would just encourage people to really seek the Lord about how He's wired you. For me, it was like John the Baptist. I love like John the Baptist as a guy in the Bible, and I just relate so much to him and the journey and the wilderness and like all this kind of stuff, just preaching, fiery preaching. So I love that. And so for me, my message is, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. You know what I mean? Same message that Jesus had, like, is repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And the way that looks, though, I think we can get kind of stuck on how the thing looks. So there's a message, and then there's what I call like the megaphone, right? Like the instrument that you're using to get the message out there. So the message is not the megaphone. The megaphone is not the message. Like it's
so good.
So for me, I'm having to now say, okay, I'm in a different season right now where I was doing a lot of hip hop, and again in my last album, that people can kind of start hearing a transition of like, okay, yeah, there's actually like more singing involved and all this kind of stuff, and that's me figuring out, okay, what is the mode? What does the mode look like? The message is going to be the same, but the mode is going to be different. And then the last thing that I would say is, as far as authenticity, I feel like there's what God's doing in my life, and then there's what God's doing in culture. The story of what God's doing in my life, the story of what God's doing in culture. When those two things intersect, for me, that's authenticity. That's also prophetic. You know what I'm saying? Like what God is saying to me in my life, and what God is, and where the culture is, and where there's an intersection there, God's not only speaking to me, He's also speaking to whoever He's given me influence to reach. So I want to write. For me, I don't have to think too hard about, okay, what do people need to hear? Because I'm writing from a place of like, this is what God is saying to me, but it's also something that everybody else needs to hear too. You know what I'm saying? So authenticity, like I can be as authentic as I want to be, and it's going to reach who God has designed for it to reach, because there's that cross section there. Yes,
that's so good. I love how you said, a voice in the wilderness. There is a message, but there's a context, right?
Yeah.
The voice is in the wilderness. So what does it need? It needs to project. It needs to be loud. It needs to like cut through that environment, and like knowing the environment that you're in, but not being dictated, but actually like bringing the right message to the right context. That's really good. And, as a lot of this content is for leaders that are preparing, right? They're still in that preparation season, and they're wondering if they can get away with sleeping in. They're wondering if they can get away with fudging or skipping some of their preparation. And we're here to tell you, like, no, you can't. You can't skip this preparation season. Even if nobody's applauding you, if no one's bragging on you or nagging on you, you have to do this. You have to put in the work and prepare and figure this stuff out, because it is going to help you, but it's going to help a whole lot of other people too. And so be willing to go through that journey. And just kind of like a honorable mention for Rise, which we'll get to at the end of this, your creative communities and your vision for creative communities. John the Baptizer was in a community out there. He wasn't just, a survivalist kind of getting antisocial. He was actually being forged in a community that were all set apart like that. And then he had all, come on. It's amazing. And I mean, just the sacrifice that he made. He could have been in like a more vocational ministry mode, and instead he was doing more lifestyle ministry to the Lord, and then letting that be his voice. And then like he had different, I don't know, like sides of his own life and his own message. Because like on one side he's cutting through and he's saying, you know, brood of vipers, and on the other side he's like, but it's because I want to be a friend of the bridegroom. And like you do a great job with your albums because you actually take people on the story, right? You take people on that journey so they see it. But like, do you have to give everything in one piece of art, or can you create like different projects that are kind of pulling out different sides of your own story and worldview? Like on one side he's saying, you know, brood of vipers, you guys, you're putting your trust in the wrong thing. And then on the other side, he's like, hey, but it's all about, you know, this man, and I want to be a friend of this bridegroom. And so he was tough, but he was tender, and you didn't see it all at once. I don't know. That's kind of the way I'm thinking of it.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think for me, the way that I've thought about it is that art is art has a message. And so because art has a message and art is always speaking, then there's a conversation being had. So I kind of follow the rules of conversation. And so at first I was not, you know, at first I was just kind of like, this is going to be a one-sided conversation, and I need to get everything that I need to get to this person, to this listener. Like I need to get it in right there, you know. But now, you know, now I'm just like, okay, I need to have, I'm having a conversation, you know what I mean? And so like, if I'm having a conversation with you, I'm not just jumping all the way deep into the point that I want to get across. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, let's have a conversation. And what I also love about art is that, you know, if it's honest, it's going to display the totality of what it means to be human. You know what I'm saying? So what it means to be human and what it means to be, you know, it's like Jesus, like fully being in touch with your humanity and fully being in touch with the Spirit of God that's on the inside of you. So that's what it's been for me. And I think you can't do that for, I can't say anybody that nobody can, but for me, it's hard to do that in the 3-minute song, like to do all of that. So that's why I really do love albums. I love, you know, seeing the whole span of like, oh wow, this person is really going through, like I can relate to that on this track, but I can also relate to this on this track. And it, you know, it gives you a bigger picture of what it means to be human and what it means to walk in the Spirit all at the same time.
Yeah, so good. I want to zoom in on that because we're getting into your creative process, and I'm going to ask how your, you know, creative process has changed the most in the past year. But I love how you just like gave a fresh take on, you know, the scripture as art and seeing Jesus as an artist. And that's amazing. And I think that would inspire a lot of creatives to get to know the Lord in that way, and then to be able to express, you know, part of his character in culture that way. So that's really cool. All right. So you're talking about you like working on kind of a collection or kind of like batch work where you kind of see the macro view first. I mean, that's the way we plan our week, right? You start with the end in mind, you get the big picture, and then you can begin to design each part of the week. So like, take us through your creative process. What's been one or two of the biggest changes in your creative process practically? Like, did you procrastinate and now you're doing better at like hitting due dates ahead of time, or do you have to really get like off site so that way you can focus, or do you just find little windows in the day and you're just kind of writing on your phone? Like, kind of give us some tactics how your creative process has kind of shifted in the past year.
Yeah. So I think for me, one of the biggest ways that it shifted was in how I'm allowing myself to be inspired. And so for me, I'll just use my albums again as an example. Like the album before Rise was called Between Dreams and Reality. In that process, I wanted to get alone, and I knew the message, you know what I mean? I was like, okay, I've got to have, I want to help increase people's faith. I want to get them from this place of like, believing in some, believing that God's going to do something to actually like seeing it manifest in their lives. And so I wanted to get away to a place where I can get alone with God and just dream and write from that place. So I ended up going to this place in Schulenburg, actually, Jordan Ranch. And I ended up going over there and just spending I think it was 5 days. And in 5
Nice.
days, I ended up writing maybe 75% of the album.
Wow.
Days. And so I was just there by myself. It's just me and God and the deer and just writing. Well, this one, the album is called Rise, and I wanted to write from a space of tension. That was my whole thing. I wanted to write from a space of like, okay, there's a lot of people who have, after they've gotten to this whole like, yes, I've taken this leap of faith. It's going to be a reality. Now the hard stuff starts happening, and it's like, and I'm living this in real time, by the way. Like as I'm writing this, I'm living this in real time. And so I said, you know what, like with what I'm doing right now, I'm not sure that I would actually be able to get away and just for 5 days and just do stuff, just write 75% of the album. There's no way. And I wanted it to be collaborative too. So it just didn't make sense to go out and try to, make my own tracks and all that kind of stuff. It didn't make sense. So I intentionally wanted my inspiration to come from like things in passing, you know what I'm saying? Like as I'm doing life. So I'd be driving up and down the street, just getting inspiration that way, just different life scenarios as I'm talking with artists and all these different things. And so for me, it really does depend on my season of life and the message. I will say before the Rise album, like it was always, hey, let me just get in the word and let me just not feel anything. Let me just literally go inside the word and be like, I see what's wrong with culture. Let me address that in the word and that kind of thing. And so now I'm realizing.
I think you're talking to some pastors now, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I'm realizing like, wait, like I am culture. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not this like outside thing that I'm just pointing my finger at and saying, okay, you guys need to change. Like, no, this is like, we all have common experiences. We all need Jesus. You know what I mean? And so I'm writing, like, I wanted to write from that place of tension of like, man, this is just me going through everyday life, struggling to find time to write, you know what I mean? Because I've got so many responsibilities. Like, I wanted to write from that space. And so yeah, man. It was different. It took a long time because it was collaboration and everything. But honestly, like, it's one of my favorite projects. It's related so well to people. It's my highest streamed songs are on the Rise album. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's just like a testament to like, yeah, sometimes it's okay to embrace that tension and say, hey, let's create together, and let's live together in this community, and let's change the world together. I think that's how we go from floor to rising.
Yes. So practically, for the Rise album, did you start with a due date, or did you say, I'm just going to work on this, and then whenever it's done, then we'll kind of release it into the wild?
I did, bro. I did. So I started with a due date. That due date got pushed back. Then I was like, you know what? Because I had some other people that were kind of, people in the industry, and they were kind of like, man, you shouldn't really do an album. You should probably do singles. And I was like, okay, well, I could still tell my story and do singles at the same time. so maybe I can just like release all these different singles, you know, I have 10 songs on the album. So I was like, okay, I can just kind of release and get this momentum going. And then that didn't work because life. And so I was like,
y'all, this is what real pioneering looks like. Okay. Yeah. So be encouraged.
Yeah. And so I ended up releasing like 5 singles, and then I just released the album. And so it was so hard for people to follow that journey, the Rise album, because it was just life. And my life at that point was just like crazy. I'd stopped working at the church, you know, at my dad's church. We were trying to figure out this whole Rise community thing, like what it was, like all this kind of stuff. I'm homeschooling my girls. We're transitioning to sending them to school, wow. You know, to a charter school, which that's unheard of in my family. Like, it's just so many different things, financial situations, like all of this stuff is going on. And so I wish I could have released this like perfectly packaged thing, but I think it just added to the story. Like, yes. To the authenticity of the story. So
yes. Yes, cool. That's so good, man. You got to know the narrator. You got to pay attention to the narrative. You got to let yourself be inspired in new ways, and don't stop. I want to finish this kind of category with your creativity and just having the courage to keep exploring. Yeah. Now, like with the Rise communities, and you're mentoring other artists, and you're doing life with other creatives, what are some of the like soft skills or values, I guess, that you're emphasizing for them as they go on their journey? And then what are like some of the practical skills? Like, dude, you need to do better at, I don't know, like voice training, or you need to do better at time management. Like, kind of take us through, what are some of the heart values that you're emphasizing for people working on their journey? And then what are some of the like tactics that you can't skip out on either?
Yeah. So for the Rise communities, it's been really interesting because my wife and I, we started trying to like structure, or even over structure, like what we were trying to get to them in order for them to start their communities. And so they didn't really respond too well to that at first. And so we just kind of like scaled it back to, okay, Rise it's in like, we're a network. We're actually trying to build ourselves up to be a place of like sending missional leaders in the art space. So it really, you mentioned servant leadership before, and that's really kind of the space that we're in right now. So some of the things that we're telling them is like, hey, we're actually here for you guys, whether it's like, you know, whether it's financing or social media, or, you know, just creating videos, or at administration. Like, we want them to hit their sweet spot instead of trying to figure out instead of trying to excel at something that they're not good at. We want to come in and say, hey, we're a part of your team. That's another thing we're also telling them is, you need a team, you know, and you're familiar with the, you know, you're familiar with APEST and things like that. We're saying, okay, if we're going to create healthy communities, we need all five of those on a team. At least 2 by 2, right? If you're going to launch, at least go 2 by 2 and go do that mission work. But when it starts coming into creating healthy communities, you know, we want to have a well-rounded team. And obviously the Rise movement, our board and stuff like that, we're trying to be that for them until they have their own team. You know what I mean? So there's that aspect of it. Some of the heart value stuff, it looks really organic, because what we've learned not to do is try to answer questions that nobody's asking. So
Yeah.
if there is, if we're trying to tell them, hey, you need to do this, this, and this, and they're like, you know, they haven't even reached that point in their life to see that it's actually an issue yet, then they're just going to be like, okay, this is information that I actually don't need, you know. And information, when it comes that way, it actually is seen as a hindrance instead of a help on their journey. But when they're coming up to us and saying, hey, we're running into this issue, I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about it from the scripture. And that's generally where we land. So I'm saying that to say that it's it varies from person to person, and we just have to be like, okay, Lord, what are you saying in this situation? How does this person need to respond? So there is that. Now there are some like general things, like, you know, in the scripture, if a person's gonna be an overseer, there has to be some things that are in place in their life, right? They have to be faithful. You know, they have to be. One thing is they have to be able to teach, and teaching for us looks less like classes and more like showing people life experiences. So there's that aspect of it. Hospitality is a big thing too. We don't have a building, so it literally is like homes, and like, hey, I'm inviting people to my house. If they're starting a community, we encourage them to start it from their house, you know, depending on who they're reaching also, because we also want their homes to be safe, and people are crazy. But that's what we try to encourage people to do, man. So I hope that, I know there's a roundabout
That's so good.
way of answering the question, but
No, that's really good. Servant leadership, you got to be on a team. You got to be interdependent, not codependent. You want to have like a source that you're all going back to and saying, okay, this is our values. Like, this is our value system. It's not what we chose. It's like, this is what we're all going to be running with. This is how we're going to stay in alignment, and then just being patient with people at the stage that they're on, and not trying to rush ahead. Just be that encourager, be the empowerer. That's really, really good. Okay. So we're going to go into this next category of pioneering a creative community. I mean, that's way bigger than just you figuring out your flow, figuring out your art. Like, now you're on the next level. You're dreaming about other artists. You don't want to get on a platform. You want to become the platform. And, you know, you want to see other artists rise. You want to see other creative communities start rising in your city, other cities. I mean, it's a big vision. And so we're just going to talk about a few of the life lessons you're working on right now. Pioneering leaders are able to create space for the future to happen. And so that's what y'all are doing, is just creating this space where you can dream about the future together. You can work on, you know, where you're at in that season, and just start seeing it take shape. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea is you want to create communities that are going to help artists and everybody really rise to new heights together. And so this is groundbreaking. I mean, I can't even describe how like how meta this is, and just how like exciting this is. I mean, there's so much fanfare about like the tech space and what's going on out there, but y'all, like, if you could imagine the arts community and the creative community actually leveling up in this context, like, it is a game changer for cities and for culture at large. I think we're just scratching the surface with this concept. So can you kind of tell us, like, what would a pioneering leader do differently than, say, like an institutional leader, to actually create a healthy community where creativity is rising to new levels? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So I know we were kind of talking a little bit offline about just kind of the difference between the industrial age and the information age, right? And so a person who's building an institution, a lot of times they are not empowering people as much as they are trying to fit people into their best place in the institution, right? And so that kind of like goes back into that industrial age where the factory was the big thing, and like everybody is okay, you know, report to the factory and be a happy worker, and we're gonna try to find your best place in the factory, and if you do your part and everybody else does their part, then the factory wins, and we get to make a big name for ourselves. And it's like when it comes to like creative leaders, there's a part of every creative that's also entrepreneurial. So entrepreneurs generally, if you think about creatives as entrepreneurs, they generally don't want to hop on somebody else's thing and build their factory. It's like, I have a vision. I'm going to take this little canvas and I'm going to create something entirely awesome. And so it's entirely new and entirely awesome that wasn't here before. So it takes a different kind of leader to do that, to lead a person like that. It takes a person that is going to empower somebody instead of saying, hey, come work at the factory. So for me, what I'm finding out, it really is like servant leadership, like we've been talking about, of saying, okay, don't worry about what God's necessarily doing with me and how you can fit into my vision from God. Like, what is God telling you? Like, what is he telling you? And what does that look like in your life? How can we come alongside and help with that? You know what I'm saying? And so,
that's so good.
So all of our systems, you know, especially when you're talking about like ministries, it really does have to come back to this whole thing of you have to think of like church inside out, right? The church that we know that we know of that's prevalent, we have to start thinking about that inside out. So instead of providing money and systems and everything to bring people in and to serve the structure, we have to start thinking of like, okay, all of the money, all of the systems that we introduce, everything that we're doing is an outward focus. So we're actually providing for people that are on the edges, that are actually out doing ministry, that are actually pioneering, and they're being entrepreneurs and they're creating something that wasn't there before. Like, those people need resources. And so the biggest thing, like in the information age, again, we were talking about this offline, is like getting the information on how to do something is not an issue.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
It's not an issue anymore. But now we have people who have so much information and this information overload, and they're figuring out, man, I still need a community. Like, I still need a community. Take the music space, for instance. The music space is like, there's a big push in indie, being an indie artist, not signed to a label, because now you get to keep all your money and the technology is there where you can just release your songs. But now people are starting to figure out, like, okay, I can do that, but then there's also some infrastructure stuff that needs to be in place in order for this product to reach people. And that means I need to talk to the experts. You know what I'm saying? People who have actually been there before. And so it's the same thing, man. Like, if a leader's going to lead creative people, which is, you know, we're learning right now, it's like, we have to start thinking about, what does it look like to empower people instead of enlist people for our thing? You know what I mean? And a lot of that means like releasing control. Like, I can't be in control of something that God's called you to do. The moment that I'm able to be in control of it and I can shut it down at will, that means it's my thing, not yours.
I'm trying to just be quiet, listen, and say amen. But dude, I am shouting on the inside here. This is so good. And thank you for just giving such a clear and empathetic appeal to both creatives and leaders. Obviously creatives are leaders, but just leaders in different spaces to really go after kind of a new and needed approach. The reason I give these shout outs is because I feel like there's so much synergy already. But I had a conversation with a great friend, Chris Needham, in Prepare to Go There 109. And we were talking about, pioneering leadership versus more institutional leadership. And I asked him, I said, how do we get people from volunteers to pioneers? Because in that factory model, the only thing we really needed, or the only expectation we had, is come volunteer, instead of, hey, the expectation is you're going to go pioneer. Right. And it's like, I was asking him about just leadership capacity and like, how do we actually develop more leadership capacity for, the front lines? And we're talking very similar to this about the factory model. And factory model, was in a time period and it made sense in that setting, I guess. But it's centralized supervision. So like you could see A to B all in the same building, or A to Z all in the same building. You could see the whole process. You could see all the people, and you're supporting people that you see. But the challenge is when you're thinking, I'm going to use another analogy, just like people in the field, right? Where you're actually sending field agents out, whether it's humanitarian work or just like a military thing, or I don't know what metaphor you want to use for this, but you can't see people out in the field. And so it takes a different approach to support them and to resource them and to actually prepare them to go further than you. And so I would say like a big mindset shift is centralized supervision of people and resources to moving to relational resourcing, relational resourcing where you're actually building relationships in the context of community or network or mastermind or whatever collab you want to put on it, and then figuring out how are we going to resource these relationships in the field. And then it's somehow it just works. There's alignment, there's empowerment, there's timing, because they have the same values. The thing that unites them is not location. The thing that unites them is not even shared experiences anymore. The thing that unites them is not even the context that they're working in. The thing that unites them is more interior, is deeper. It's a value system. And, we're being shaped together in relational spaces. And then we can go shape culture with that, value system in mind, even if we're apart. And I don't know, we're just kind of like riffing on this idea for right now, but it's a big conversation. There's been a mixture of frustration and innovation around this idea. And I would just encourage creatives, listen to guys like Jarrell and follow his music, but also follow this movement and get behind it and support it at whatever level you can, whether that's obviously funding the work they're doing, praying for them, getting behind them and encouraging them, because a lot of people are needing these conversations to be worked through, and so just stick with it. Just stay encouraged and don't lose heart. What kind of we'll finish with? I'm scanning my questions here. I was going to ask you about calendar rhythms. That's something you and I have lamented about together. Just finding. Man, finding rhythms on the calendar to get this, I say it affectionately, but, this herd of cats to like all go in the same direction. I could use other analogies, but the point is people are doing life, right? They've got stuff they're excited about and stuff that they're facing. So how are you working on calendar rhythms? How do you know when something's too much or not enough to help people stay in relationship and to keep coming back into community spaces like what you're creating? Bro,
so I wish that I had the silver bullet. Like, I wish I had the answer to that. Like, I can share from our experience so far, and our experience really is that.
Well, can I pause just for a second and say, can you just talk about like how important it is to work on your calendar rhythms?
Yeah. So I think, calendar is like instrumental to culture. If you don't have if you don't have like set things, set times in place, or set times in place to where you're doing specific things and it's consistent. That's one of the things that the calendar offers is consistency, and you can't create culture without creating consistency. And so, so that's the important part of it. For me, again, so I'm kind of coming into this place of like grappling between my creative side and being brought up in the factory model, where in the factory model, your calendar was created for you, right? like this is the time you're going to show up. This is the time you're going to leave. This is your lunch time. All that got is, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So there's that, but then there's like the creative side. It's like, okay, I actually want to create my own calendar. And so with that, I'm learning that our leaders, like the people who are leading groups right now, they are doing life, and they're actually like, we're not trying to get them to create a community. Like, the community's already formed. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're trying to help them form like a team around leading that community, but they're leading people already. It's already happening. So for me to kind of, I guess, superimpose the company calendar onto their thing, it's just like, I don't think that's gonna work out for me, so again, I have to come into a level of like, what does it mean to serve from the aspect of they're already doing stuff, and how can we come to an understanding of, guys, this is actually important. So I don't try to put all these non-important things on a calendar. But what I will say is like, hey guys, let's go ahead and meet. Like, it's important for us to meet at this specific time, because it helps us all to be on the same page. So I'm doing that with my board. I'm doing that with the leaders and that kind of stuff. And so a lot of times people need to understand the why also. Before, in a previous generation, you could set a meeting and not even say the why, and people would just show up, and they would be expected to show up. You can't do that now.
Why? Because we said so.
Exactly. And you can't do that now. People are just like, okay, people are seeing the more and more the importance of their time. And so it's just like the same thing's happening with church, like with church culture. It's like, okay, you're supposed to show up because you love God. It's like, why? Like, okay, yeah, I get it, but I love God at home. So why do you want me to show up again? Like, you know what I mean? And if we're not prepared to give them the why, then they're not coming. So I have to say, this is the why. This is why it's important for us to meet. And people are not rebelling against being a part of something bigger. I do want to say that, because I feel like that's been a struggle for me in wanting to implement a lot of calendar stuff, is because I feel like I can fall into the believing the lie that people just don't want to be a part of anything bigger.
For sure.
And they all want to be individualistic. And that's actually not true. Like, people actually want to be a part of something bigger, but it's got to make sense. All right. It's got to make sense for their life calling, and there's got to be an overlap there. And we can't tell them the overlap if we're not communicating. So so I have to communicate my why. When I put something on the calendar, I have to make it make sense. You know,
I think another calendars have seasons, calendars have reasons. I'm just trying to make it simple, you know, to carry it. And so it's like, what do we need to schedule in this season? What do we need to schedule to make sense, you know, in the context of in the stage that we're in? You know, what is the win right now? And then build that calendar out and realize that it's going to look different season by season, and that's okay. And then the reasons of like you said, why are we coming back, and giving people irresistible reasons. And I think 2 irresistible reasons. Well, I mean, the most irresistible reason is we're gathering in our context, you know, around the presence of the Lord. So, I mean, that's the most irresistible reason in my mind is like, yes, we want to rally around the Lord's presence. But the other would be just relationships. People want to be in relationship, and people want to do life together, and they want to be in community. And it does feel more like a family reunion when you can hit that rhythm. And it's like, why would I not show up? I mean, this is the time where I'm in my community. This is the time where I'm hanging out with family. This is the time where we're masterminding, or this is the time where we're, you know, dreaming together about the future. And then there are moments where like you would rally around a specific family. I'm using a metaphor here, but like in pioneering, in the American West story, you know, where families are moving west, that most of their time was like just working on their own home front. You know, working on their own, like they just got like this huge, you know, area that they've got to kind of manage and grow. And the point is that there would be moments where it's like, hey, we're going to build a structure and we need more hands. And so people would kind of rally around that location and they'd kind of meet there. So you'd have different meetups where it's not the same place that you're going to again and again. I hope that makes sense or comes from the right heart. I'm just saying that it's relational. The calendar is being relationally guided. And so the meetup might look different. Like, for example, there's a movement that I know of and that I've been able to interact with. And like they do meetups like every 3 years, but it's in a different country every year. And so they're just like all over the place. I don't know if your mic.
Yes.
I hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting like some static or something.
I think it cleaned up. Well, hold on. Nope. Oh, this is so good. Thank you so much for your time on putting all this together. I will ask you just like your heart for the Rise communities. Can you just kind of like give us a field trip into the future? What do you hope for Rise communities? And then what do you hope for your cities? You know, your city where you're living in, but just wherever a Rise community shows up, you know, what do you hope for there?
Yeah, that's awesome. So, we're based in San Antonio, and our whole goal for the Rise communities that we would plant is that God uses art to transform the culture here in our city. And so that takes shape in a whole lot of different ways. But for us, a very tangible goal that we have is that by the end of 2024, we would have planted 15 multiplying communities. So that means that from the Rise movement, there would be 15 communities launched that in their DNA will launch more creative communities. And so we believe like if there is that movement at the end of 2024, what we would consider to be a community is a gathering of 20 to 50 people. So at the very least, if all the communities had about 20 in them, we're looking at about 300 people in San Antonio that are in disciple making relationships, and they're using their creativity for the glory of God. And I feel like that would be huge. You know what I mean? And that's not even taking into account that the 5, Lord willing, that we would have at the end of this year would be multiplying. You know what I'm saying? So it's like an exponential thing that we want to see happen. And so from there, man, we really do want to see these creative communities planted around the nation. We want to partner with churches in order to help the creatives in their community not feel like they have to just join the worship team or the graphics design team in order to express the full the full person of who they are and who God's called them to be. Like, we want them to really be engaged in community and mission. So at the end of 2024, we'll start looking into like expanding beyond our city and beyond, like, just beyond San Antonio. Because we'll start having we believe that we'll start having a rhythm by that point of like what it means to multiply. It's going to be like a great blueprint. And so hopefully, as we're planting throughout, planting in different cities, we want to see the kingdom happen in arts culture. We want to see righteousness, we want to see peace, and we want to see joy. Like, we want to see those things happen in the arts culture in different cities. And people are not averse to that. Like, they really do want the kingdom. They just don't know the king. And so we want to introduce them to the kingdom. We want to say, hey, the kingdom of heaven is now. You can experience that. What does the kingdom look like in the arts culture in San Antonio? What does the kingdom look like in the arts culture in your city? We want to see that happen.
Man, it's so good. And, with this YouTube community that we're growing here, we show up on Fridays. I call them the future friends, helping them stay future focused. And then we also have the Pioneer People, which is a different project with my wife and I. But whatever, I'm just kind of speaking to my group and my friends out here. Whatever we can do to get behind Jarrell and the Rise movement, I encourage you, learn about it, lean into it. Let's encourage them. There's a number of ways that you can support them. Number one, I encourage you, just check out their art, their music, their media. Be a fan, help them on that level. You can also support them financially. You can, if you're a creative, if you're based in San Antonio, or if you're in another city and you just say, hey, I got to get a part of a group of creatives that want to be in community for the sake of the city, that sounds amazing. Like, learn about what they're doing. And then also, maybe you're not like an artist like Jarrell, but you have a heart for this kind of conversation. You just want to learn some best practices and you want to continue to follow their story. At any range of this, we can get behind this, because I believe we need more pioneering leaders, not fewer, and we got to encourage each other. So thank you so much, Jarrell. Anything else? I'll give you last words. Let us know where we can find you. I got you at Jarrell FMG. Is that right?
Yes.
And then also werise.city.
Yes, that's it. That's our website.
Tell us anything else. Last words, man. I've been so appreciative. This has been just a great time. But go ahead and finish it out.
Yeah, bro. I want to say thank you for inviting me onto your platform and just giving me the opportunity to share what God's doing in our city, what God's doing through these groups, and just I love the conversation about pioneering, man. I love what you're doing, what you and Sarah Joy are doing. And I believe that you are a pioneer in your own right. And so for me to have this honor to be sitting with you, man, on this is just incredible. So keep going, bro. Your labor is not in vain. You're doing amazing, man. So,
thank you. Thank you so much. And, you know, just growing up in church like you did, man, I was already surrounded in an environment where you can do anything, you can change the world. Yeah. You know, we're going to go for it. But then I hit that first wall, which is like self-leadership. It's like, you're not going to go there if you don't know how to lead yourself practically. And so I've just kind of slowed everything way back and just help people on the journey where they are, where I've been, and it's been really encouraging. So, hey, Jarrell, you got an open invite. Anytime you can come back on, and then my hope is to see maybe some bigger conversations where there's 2, 4, 6 of us all on the same screen, kind of having these kind of conversations as well. Awesome. So, guys, thank you so much. I'm gonna pull Jarrell out. Love you, brother. And I say thank you guys so much for being on the live streams and also checking out Jarrell's work. It's really good. I just want to say, check out the quiz again. Find out your Pioneering Archetype so that way you can lead with more confidence and competence. It's really important that you're putting in the legwork now. And then also, you can find that in a few places. You can find it in the link at the bottom of this video. And then you can also go to pioneertheyear.com. Let me go to that page and pull it in. I hope you enjoyed this. I love talking with Jarrell. He is an encouragement and an example. Go to pioneertheyear.com and you're going to find my flagship digital course. It's going to help you learn a pioneering approach to life planning and leadership. You know, we find ourselves, even with good intentions, we find ourselves in a repeat year cycle. We get stuck in ruts, and basically our dreams are outdated because we didn't make progress like we thought. And so we're writing the same frustrations down in our journals every year. We're having do-over goals again and again, and we don't know how to actually like go beyond that threshold, go into the future frontier so we can actually pioneer a year like, you know, like no other. And so if you need the insights and the strategies, you need a real practical roadmap. That's what this is going to give you. It's in 4 modules, and it's going to work through the 4 big challenges that we face over and over again. Things like clutter and indecision and self-sabotage and apathy. And you're going to start with kind of an inside-out approach. You're going to start with self-leadership. You're going to learn how to get clear, get going. You're going to learn how to show up ready, and then you'll learn how to go further. And so it starts in self-leadership, goes all the way to team leadership and beyond. I would love for you to check out this course. It is available right now. You go to pioneertheyear.com, and then you can get involved in, you know, the other coaching opportunities that we're having. I'm really excited. I'm working on a kind of coaching mastermind. I'm going to try to pitch it like a challenge, and I'll make it available to this amazing group of future friends and pioneering leaders. I hope that you realize that what you're working on today matters, that what you're doing is important. And other people may not see what you're working on right now. They may not even value what you're working on right now. But I'm telling you, it's worth it. It's going to make a difference, because there is a point sometime in the future where they're going to need it. They're going to need you, and they're going to need what you've been working on today. So keep going, keep growing. I will be back next Friday. Got another great conversation coming your way. And in the meantime, check out the audio podcasts on Spotify and Apple and pretty much anywhere you listen to audio podcasts. New episodes are dropping every Monday. And actually, there's another podcast my wife, Sarah Joy, and I created called Pioneer People. It's if you're actually like launching something new, and I refer to it as a team thing. So you're an entrepreneur, or you want to plan a community, or even you got a heart for movements, go ahead and check that out. The first episode is on 7 mistakes that entrepreneurs make. We learned it in person, and now we want to share it with you so that way we can laugh together. Remember, you're going places, so prepare to go there. See ya.